Welcome to the Infinity Spring Shawl. We're going to go ahead and work row 27 together, which has the opening curve, and that will get us started with working the cable work that is worked a bit different than what you may be used to. What we'll do is start this row by chaining 2. Then we're going to skip this first stitch and single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in the next. This gives us an increase of our linen stitch. Then we will chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, do that twice, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, and now it's time to do our opening curve. To do this, we'll start by creating our front float stitches. So we will front float 3 trebles. To do this, we're going to skip 2 stitches and then count down 2 rows. This will be our stitch that we will be working around. We will yarn over twice, go through that single crochet stitch, and complete a treble crochet. We're going to do that 2 more times, and each time we will work above the stitch we just created. So here goes our second. We're going to place it right above the last. Our second floating treble crochet, and now our third floating treble crochet. Now that we have our 3 front floating stitches, we're going to go and continue what we're doing on the background for 4 linen stitches. To do this, we're going to pick up where we left off. Our last linen stitch was a single crochet, so we will need to chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. And then do that again, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. So as far as our background stitches go, we did not skip anything on the back when we made those floating stitches. Now we're going to complete the other side of our curve. What we want to do is turn our work slightly. It'll make it easier to complete these. And we will be working in the base of these front floating stitches that we've already created. So we'll yarn over twice. We're going to work top down, so go to this top floating stitch, and it's best to work through the stitch. The reason why is it makes a smoother transition between each floating stitch. If we work around it, it's a bit bulky. If you just can grab a couple strands, which I know sometimes it can be a bit tricky on this first opening curve, it'll be a bit smoother. So we complete our first floating stitch. Now we're going to do our second, working from top down. And now for our third. What this does is create some smooth lines that are joined together, and we have a nice smooth start to our cable. Now we're going to go work the stitches on the back and continue the linen stitch where we left off. So we will chain 1, skip 1, and single crochet in the next. We're not actually skipping any background stitches, we're just continuing that linen stitch where we left off. And now we are at the end of that row. So here is our opening curve. When we come back on the even row, what we will be doing is skipping our floating stitches. So we're almost going to pretend like they're not there. So let's do that together. Turn your work and chain 2. And this is a turning chain plus the first stitch. So we'll skip this one, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and now remember, we will single crochet into this chain 1, and then the next 3 stitches that we see are the floating stitches. We're going to pretend like they are not there. We will chain 1, allow them to float on the front, and single crochet into the next chain 1 linen space. So our background linen stitches will remain the same as we increased on the last round, but we're going to not count the floating stitches on this row. Completely ignore those floating stitches on this row. So on this side, all we're really seeing is the linen stitches. We're not seeing any floating stitches. And by doing it this way, we're also eliminating the gaps that are often found behind cables. So as you can tell, we just have our linen stitch row, and then we have our floating stitches waiting for us to come back and work them on row 29. So for row 29, we will chain 2, skip the first, single crochet in the next, I almost missed that one, chain 1, single crochet in the next, and we're going to be doing this until we get to our last 12 stitches. And when we count linen stitches, we are counting those chains. So now what we will do is work our next floating stitches. We will work around the floating stitches we made by front floating 3. And this time we're just working double crochet because we don't need to reach quite as far. If you find that your floating stitches are too tight, add one more yarn over. If they're too loose, either tighten the tension or take away a yarn over. Now we're going around that third. And I still like to work through the stitches, but it's okay if you decide to work around them. Now we'll continue our linen stitch on the background by chaining 1, skip 1, single crochet. Do that 4 times. And now we will work 3 more front float double crochet stitches around the previous floating stitches. Now that those floating stitches are done, we will continue on by chaining 1, skipping, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. And so you can see that this cable will start to work within our work, and it has a nice floating pop without adding a lot of gaps or holes on the back side.